So we are going to continue with our discussion from Monday. I believe there's some questions. Is that correct? That we haven't answered. So I thought we'd start with answering the questions. Hare Krishna to everyone. Nice to see you all. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. You know, sometimes you may wonder, say, why would who was giving a class and who was older, both in Krishna consciousness and in years, offer obeisances, especially some of the devotees he's giving class to are his own disciples. There are many answers, but one answer is that we are trying, and we should, and we're trying to see everyone as better than us. So even often Prabhupada would say that his disciples are better than him. In his pure love for Krishna, he would say that. So that's how he would see things. And that's how we should see things, at least try. And also, I think it's important to understand, and even if we don't see that way, it then becomes a practice that we should see that way. Because if we don't see that way, how do we see? We see the faults of others and we feel ourselves better and we try to prove ourselves to be better, etc., which has nothing to do with bhakti. So I think it's important to understand. And obviously, one of the problems we have is we are conditioned souls, and conditioned souls are habituated to see things in a certain way. And one of the ways in which we see things is we're always trying to outdo others. We tend to be critical of others because we want to magnify our own position and so forth. And, you know, to be able to respect everyone is a big, of course, it's something that is not ordinary. But it's something that is the symptom of pure bhakti. And therefore, it is something we need to practice. But aside from practicing, I would say for advanced devotees, they simply see themselves as servants. That how can I serve you? And if you are ever given the position over anybody and you don't see your position as a servant, it is dangerous because it now verges on exploitation. If I don't see that I am a servant of others, then what am I? A master? Or is there a gray area where I don't realize, I know I'm not a master, I don't realize I'm a servant? Okay, that may be there. But that's still dangerous because it could devolve into I'm a master. I'm better than you. So this is why a devotee, any caliber devotee, will pay obeisances to everyone. And then, I mean, if you want to become a little extreme, pay obeisances even to an ant, because I see Krishna's in the heart of the ant. So what to speak of pay obeisances to humans, what to speak of pay obeisances to devotees. So this is the attitude we're trying to cultivate. And it's sorely needed in our own lives. It's sorely needed in the world. And it is the basis of our philosophy. And although it's the basis of our philosophy, we can say it's one of the most difficult things to realize because we're so entrenched in our bodily identification, our sex, our culture, our country, our age, our conditioning, and we're so entrenched in it, we don't even realize how entrenched we are in it. And I'll give you an example. Often when I give class, people will meet me after class and they'll say, something that I said, which is not something that I said, but it's something that went into their minds and it gelled with the way they see things and gelled with their experience of life. So therefore, when I said something, it hit this ground inside that meant something else other than what I said, because it didn't enter into a pure, unconditioned mind. And so if you don't know, I'm here to tell you that we make assumptions all the time. And it's natural that we make assumptions because assumptions are based on our experience. So, if I invite you to come to Alachua, you'll think, oh, I can leave Europe and come to Florida. It's nice and warm. Well, I think this morning it was like in centigrade, it was probably like 7. So that's not so nice and warm. In Fahrenheit, it's under 50 degrees, but it's Florida. So you make an assumption. Well, it's North Florida, and North Florida is different than South Florida. And I was just in South Florida, and it was in the morning, it was probably 25 degrees, not 7, but that's South. So you see, it's innocent and it's natural and it's normal that we're entrenched in our conditioning and we make assumptions based on experience. There's nothing, we can't fault anybody for doing it, but it's just good to be aware of it. And therefore, being aware of that is, I'm very aware that I identify with my body and my religion and my race and my country and my place of birth and my culture and my language, my gender or chosen gender now, etc. And now we're giving a class on the topic of violence, and we're seeing that the conflicts in the world are based, conflicts are based on many things, but obviously the conflicts are based on religious identity or cultural identity with identification with the country and so on. So sometimes we are enemies, even if we don't know one another, because we share different religious beliefs. So we inherit an enemyship, if that's a word. I'm a Catholic and you're a Protestant, and we're both born in Ireland. So we are born enemies, and we don't even know one another, and we could be best friends. So that's going on all over the world. I'm not supposed to like you because I'm Jewish and you're Arab. So we shouldn't like one another, especially if our parents didn't like one another. So these things are going on, as you know. Oh. Hare Krishna. Yes. So it's very, I just want to talk about this for a few moments longer, because I think it's important to realize that it's not always easy to hear, because you think you're hearing and you think you're understanding, and you may be, how should I say, mixing it with something that's already in the dish. Like I'm serving you, but there's remnants of this other bitter sabji, and I'm serving you another sabji. Oh, this sabji, it tastes bitter like the last one. Well, yeah, it's because you still have some of the last one in there. So sometimes we have something in our conditioned mind that we don't realize is blocking us from being able to hear. And we're hearing according to that flavor or that vision or that assumption. And so it's just good to be aware of that, like they say, there's 3 sides to every story. No, you've heard there's 2 sides to every story, right? Haven't you heard that saying? That someone rightly said there's 3 sides: your side, their side, and the truth. So it's usually like that. You have a subjective view, they have a subjective view, and in between that, a disinterested, objective third party can help you ascertain what is the truth between all of that. So we as devotees are trying to be objective. And as we discussed on Monday, sometimes Prabhupada will say something and it'll just like shatter us inside. I'm just like, did he say that? Do I have to accept that? Did I hear that correctly? Yeah, you did. That's what he said. Okay, maybe you don't understand it, and it may take you time to understand it. But sometimes within our conceptions of what is right and wrong, some things are not always easy to hear, and therefore we might reject it and say, no, he didn't really mean that. And in some cases, maybe it is a misunderstanding and he didn't mean it. But in many cases, it's not. No, he did mean it. This is what he said. And you study everything he said and you realize, yeah, that's what he said. So now I have to understand why he said it and what he meant by it, rather than think I understand what he said to make it fit with what I believe and what makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And sometimes we do that, right? That's the difficult of being a disciple, because when you become a disciple, in a sense, you're giving up a certain kind of freedom to be overly analytical about what your spiritual master is saying, to make, because you as a disciple, you can't try to fit everything into your mental system to make you feel good about it. It's just like Arjuna was like not feeling good about what Krishna was saying. And Krishna saying, kill, and Arjuna saying, no, this doesn't make any sense. So Arjuna was like really setting a good example for us of misunderstanding his guru. Well, he hadn't accepted Krishna as his guru yet, but we'll say for the sake of this discussion, Krishna is his guru, and he was misunderstanding according to his own understanding. And Prabhupada said, in a relativistic sense, his understanding was correct. It was just not applicable to the situation. So that's also another point. Like, what you may understand may be correct. It's just not correct here. So compassion is correct. Dharma, maintaining dharma is correct. These were the arguments Arjuna used. And Krishna said, yeah, but it's not correct in this application. So sometimes it's like that, You understand something correctly, it just doesn't apply. And so Prabhupada's applying it to a different situation. And that's why you get, the expression is in America, bent out of shape. Do you have that expression in your country? Bent out of shape? Like, you say something and it just really disturbs you, like, why, Samir, why are you doing that? And it just like really upsets her. And she says, oh, she got all bent out of shape. I was just asking why she was doing that. So that's the bent out of shape means it's like you overreacted. So sometimes we can get bent out of shape because we don't understand application. Sometimes we get bent out of shape because what we would say to this situation is not exactly what Prabhupada would say. And what Prabhupada's saying is just like, it's making us feel uncomfortable. And we would rather he say something else, but he's not. And he has a reason that he's not saying something else, and he wants us to understand things in a specific way. Now, he may say something else in another situation, or he may not say something else that we want him to say. So this is the challenge of being a disciple, because the guru doesn't always say what you want him to say. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, why couldn't you have said this instead of that? You ever think like that? Like, my life would be so much easier if you just would have said this. And now I have to, not only is it difficult for me to accept, but I have to like preach it and defend it. And I don't even believe it. Well, it may be that you don't understand it. That could also be part of it. Or maybe that it's like we don't have enough subtlety in or purity to understand that what Prabhupada means is often not what you think he means, and which is why you're so upset, because you think he means this. Like the women less intelligent, the whole thing that Prabhupada means is men protect women. You have to protect them. That's what he's saying, but we take it like, oh, he's putting women down as derogatory. It's macho, patriarchal, et cetera, et cetera. I just can't accept this. When actually he's saying, he's rooting for you, saying, to the men who are exploiting you, they should protect you. But we don't understand that. We think, oh, this is not egalitarian, and this is, when we have all the politically incorrect words, right, to describe it, when it's not even that. So, because we come from a different culture and a different universe and a different time, we maybe misunderstand. So, anyway, these are just things to be aware of, and also to be aware of in the discussion we're having now, because Prabhupada is going to say something. We've already read some of the things. He's going to say something like violence is required. Sometimes it's required. Okay, so I've done a little more study, and I asked Chaitanya Dasi to put up 2 quotes that I just sent her. I sent her more than 2, but I just sent her 2, which I think are important to read now, because these are not quotes that will bend you out of shape. These are quotes that will bend you into shape, because you'll like these. They'll make you feel warm and fuzzy before you get the other quotes that will bend you out of shape. At least will bend you into shape, so you have a better chance of not being bent out of shape. Are you ready? This one you don't have to be ready for. You'll like this quote. So can you put it up in the chat, or did you already do it? Oh yeah, we have these questions. Oh yeah, we have questions. I want to read this first. I want to read these 2 quotes I sent you on WhatsApp first, and then we'll go to the questions. But before, I'm experimenting with, I just bought a drink which nourishes the brain. As you sometimes remember, I used to forget what I was talking about, which I believe is due to a lack of sleep. But my body could fall apart, but if my brain falls apart, that's like a disaster. I have these nightmares of thinking of gurus with dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on. And now the things they're saying don't make sense. And then the godbrothers have to tell the disciples not to listen to their guru. And it's just like a total nightmare. Hopefully that won't happen. Perhaps our lifestyle prevents us from this happening, but I can't think of anything worse than a guru losing his mental faculty and then the disciples fighting. No, that's really what he meant to say, but the other 5 saying, but he never said that before. Yeah, so I have some medicines for all of you, just so you know that I take a lot of what I think are essential medicines to maintain my health. So you always say to me, take care of your health. Well, I do. And I get the best of what I think is necessary to maintain my health, and see doctors as necessary. So I don't skimp and compromise and try to save $1 here or there. I do what's necessary, just so you know that. But specifically, of course, my body is, of course, important, but I think the mind's more important. So I do take a few things which should keep my mind working, or at least that's my hope. So here's a quote from Prabhupada. We find in modern warfare that attacks are made upon innocent citizens who are without fault. This is very interesting. We talked about this on Monday. Innocent citizens without fault. According to the law of Manu, such warfare is a most sinful activity. Furthermore, at the present moment, civilized nations are unnecessarily maintaining many slaughterhouses for killing innocent animals. When a nation is attacked by its enemies, the wholesale slaughter of the citizens should be taken as a reaction to their own sinful activities. That is nature's law. Of course, you could ask the question, well, everyone's eating meat, so why one country as opposed to another? Are they eating more meat than another? And we can't answer these questions. I don't think we should try to answer these questions. I don't think we should fault one people over another. And I think we have to also, as we discussed on Monday, realize that there are just forces at play that we don't understand, and our view as devotees, as Brahmins, is we want everyone to be happy. That is our goal. We're not happy when people suffer. We don't think, aha, they must have been oh, I know why they're suffering, because they were Nazis in, in their last life, and they tortured people, so now they're being tortured. That could even be true, but it's not that we think this way. Oh, I know all these cows are being killed, because they were all butchers in their last life. And they all worked in slaughterhouses, so they all deserve it. More cows killed, the better. We don't think that way. Prabhupada pushed us to protect cows, right? So we do what is right. We manifest compassion. As we said on Monday, we feel bereaved by the suffering of people, no doubt. Any civilized persons, their heart will break to see innocent people suffer. And here, Prabhupada is quoting the law of Manu, saying that in war, it is sinful if any civilians are injured or killed. It is improper. And I don't know if you know this, but this Brahmastra weapon is very interesting because I don't understand the science behind it. It's the science of sound, and I didn't pay attention. Krishna didn't give me a scientific brain. I can validate that, which probably explains why I wasn't so attentive in my science classes. In high school science, I was like, I didn't know what they were talking about. I did better in university, but not a lot of interest in it. So I've never really grasped the concept of how a mantra can shoot a weapon and how much that mantra has to do with the explosiveness of the weapon, or the weapon isn't explosive and the mantra is just guiding it, and so on and so forth. And I think Prabhupada would say, if we want to understand that, why are you wasting your brain trying to understand it? Because a lot of things devotees would try to understand. He would say, why are you wasting your time? Just get out of the material world. Focus your attention on that. But we have to say, what Prabhupada said about the Brahmastra in relation to this, that the Brahmastra was a weapon, which Prabhupada said was a nuclear weapon, or similar to nuclear, meaning fire. Just burn, hit somebody, as far as I understand, just burns them up instantly. But the difference between modern nuclear weapons and the Brahmastra, as we read in the Bhagavatam, is that the Brahmastra would, the mantra would find it. So if you want to assassinate the leader of Hamas, you can send a Brahmastra and it'll find him and no one else will be killed. I mean, you can send it to all the top Hamas people. You can decide who you want to kill, but no one else will be killed. It'll just kill them. That's it. There's no big explosion around them. And if they leave Palestine and go into Egypt, it'll follow them. It's amazing. Like we don't understand the science. But that it's interesting because according to Manu, in battle, only soldiers should be killed. The soldiers are going forward and the soldiers are attacking you. So you have a right, if someone attacks you, according to karma and military law, you have a right to defend yourself or attack them. So you only have a right to attack the people that are fighting you. You don't have a right to attack innocent people, even if the innocent people are a part of a country which is attacking you, or they support the attack. If they're not involved in the attack, then it is sinful to attack them. They're not fighting you. You have no right to kill them. So this is the perfect weapon because it follows that law of Manu. Now, something else you may have heard, which is quite interesting, and this is another thing, I don't know, get your brain around. It's kind of like one of those things where you read about prostitutes who were devotees. That's like a difficult one, like prostitutes who are devotees in Vedic culture. Yeah, you ever have difficulty with that one? Is it better to be a devotee prostitute, or is it better to be a non-devotee doctor? What's your answer? Should we give a class in ethics? These moral ethics, Now, of course, the women are going to say, I'm not going to be a prostitute. But as I understand, it was a society in which that was kind of like their varna, their profession, and they had no other way. to earn a livelihood. And so they were like kind of forced to that. It doesn't make sense in our culture because we could say, no, you just go to college, get an education. You don't have to do that. But apparently in that culture they did. So, but that's another topic. The Prabhupada said that wars were fought on battlefields, right? Battlefield of Kurukshetra. They weren't fought, it wasn't fought in the city. It's like, okay, we can't resolve this diplomatically. So there's the only other way to resolve it is we're going to fight. And one side at a certain point is going to surrender, and then you'll just do what we ask rather, because if you're not willing to negotiate, then we're going to have to fight, and whoever wins, then you just surrender to them. That's kind of how it worked, right? So, in modern politics, they always say, through diplomacy, we want to avoid the war. Right. I heard the funniest thing. It was so interesting. Putin is condemning this war, and he said they need to have diplomatic discussion to end this war immediately. And he said, this is, inhumane what they're doing and killing innocent citizens. Oh, that was really interesting. I don't assume this was a political move. I assume that he feels his war is different. All right. But even Putin is looking at this like in a Vedic way, you could say, that this is inhumane, as the rest of the world is saying. So there were battlefields. That's where the wars were fought, on battlefields. That means there were no innocent citizens who would be harmed. Now, what's interesting, this is going to sound interesting to the modern world. Gaurapriya, get ready for this. I don't think this is going to fit into your brain at all. People would come to the sidelines of the battlefield to watch it. Now, Gaurapriya, what if your husband said, there is a battle going on and people are being slaughtered and I'm going to go watch it today? What would you think? You'd probably divorce him, right? That this man is like insane. Then the next question, say, I would cut his head off if he just said, I want to go to a football game. What to speak of watch a battle? Or then the next question is, were there women there watching it? And the next question is, why would they watch it? Were they rooting for their team? How was it a sport? And the answer is, it was very much like a sport. There were rules and they followed the rules. And the battle went from sunrise to sunset, and after sunset, it stopped. And sometimes the opposing parties would have dinner together. Get your brain around that. That's like, this is like a different time, a different world, a different culture. And because I travel a lot, I go to different cultures, and I can say from experience that, the cultures on this planet are not like as different as Veda culture is to modern times. But even still, when I go to different cultures, they do some things which I think are really weird and I don't understand. And this is just this planet in 2023. What to speak of 5, 10, 20, 100,000 years ago. So, we can't try to understand this exactly in relation to the modern world and its values and so forth. But at least we can appreciate that no citizens who were not soldiers were involved in the war. And that's the point Manu is making here. So I think that makes everybody feel, I think this purport makes everybody feel good. There are two things, innocent citizens and unnecessary killing. And then the last thing is that something we knew and we discussed on Monday is that war is a consequence of animal slaughter. And that I don't think is difficult to understand. I mean, where does that karma go? I mean, if the humans are committing violence towards animals, doesn't that come back on them? And you might think, well, that should only come back on the people that are doing it. But as we discussed yesterday, that's true, but it also can be by proximity come on people who haven't done it also, because you're living in the same location, and sometimes the karma goes across the the entire location. And, if there are tsunamis, earthquakes, and so on, it affects large groups of people. So if I do something sinful and it causes the earth to react, and everyone or many people will suffer. And I think, but this is also, we can't say exactly how this happens. Here are the details. This was the person who committed this sin, and he lives in this city, and therefore this was the center of the earthquake. And unfortunately, all the people in the city suffered because of him. You can't say that exactly, but in general, you can understand it. It works. It works in that way. A bad leader creates hell for everyone. A good leader creates heaven for everyone. As in one individual could, by whose actions can create hell for many people. Okay, so we have one more. We have one more quote, yeah. And this, I'm not sure where this is from. In this age, it could have been a continuation of this purport. In this age of Kali, the propensity for mercy is almost nil. Consequently, there is always fighting and wars between men and nations. Men do not understand that because they unrestrictedly kill so many animals, they also must be slaughtered like animals in big wars. This is very much evident in the Western countries. In the West, slaughterhouses are maintained without restriction. And therefore, every 5th or 10th year, there's a big war in which countless people are slaughtered even more cruelly than the animals. So, okay. So it's from 426.5. Sometimes during war, soldiers keep their enemies in concentration camps and kill them in very cruel ways. These are reactions brought about by unrestricted animal killing in the slaughterhouse and by hunters in the forest. Proud demoniac persons do not know the laws of nature or the laws of God. Consequently, they unrestrictedly kill poor animals, not caring for them at all. This Krishna consciousness movement is the only means by which the sinful activities of men in this Kali Yuga can be counteracted. So here we have a problem that there are people more today than when I was young who recognize that, I don't think they call it sinful, but they recognize the inhumane behavior of animal killing, whereas many people think it's normal. Right? It's just a normal way of life. You eating meat. So we've come some way from when I was a kid, where being vegetarian was much more rare than it is today. And concern about violence to animals was almost nil, other than, to pets. So this is interesting because you look at the world and you think, ISKCON has so little effect on the world. Well, it has more effect than we think, but still, it doesn't look like we have a lot of effect. Some of it's subtle, so we can't tell. But, that people believe in karma, reincarnation, or doing yoga, kirtan, becoming vegetarian, that's the effect of ISKCON. But at the same time, you could say it's not really changing the world in a massive way. But for the sake of discussion, this purport is telling us that if we had more influence in the world and people at least stop killing cows, if they want to kill other animals, Prabhupada said, if they must eat meat, let them kill other animals, but not the cow, because the biggest reactions come from killing cows, because cows are sacred, dear to Krishna. And so Prabhupada is saying that if people, I'll rephrase this, he's saying that if people practice Krishna consciousness, if people accepted what we taught, it would stop war. Which is quite interesting because Prabhupada said war is happening from time immemorial. Like, who has ever been able to stop war? Look at the history of the world. There's always war. And Prabhupada's saying it could stop because it's a reaction to animal slaughter. So just for the sake of discussion, that means that our movement has the potential to put an end to all wars if people actually listen to what we were saying, follow what we were saying, if people live like devotees. Now, you may look at devotees and say, devotees, they always argue, or they're so critical, or they're this or that, right? You can You know, go down the list, right? You ever go down the list? Devotees are very nice, you know, they're this and that. But what percentages of devotees in the world eat cows? I think 0.0000000000000. And what percentage of the devotees have abortions? Maybe 0.00000000001. I mean, it happens rarely, circumstantial for whatever reason, but it's extremely rare. And the eating of, and Prabhupada said, if someone leaves Krishna consciousness and they don't eat meat, I would not consider them a non-devotee. It's only when they eat meat that I would consider them a non-devotee. Did you know that? You think so-and-so left, he's drinking tequila, you know, he's sleeping around with women, this and that. Well, is he eating meat? No, he's still a devotee. Like there's still hope, kind of saying, you know, it's not, all is not lost. So just think of this, devotees, think of this. The lifestyle of devotee, if everyone lived our lifestyle, that would stop all the war. Now, if everyone lived the lifestyle of the Islamic lifestyle or the Christian lifestyle, or the Buddhists are not vegetarian, etc., then would that stop world war? No, it wouldn't. But if everyone lived the lifestyle of Hare Krishna devotees, it would stop world war. That is powerful, don't you think? I mean, you know, you think, okay, you know, we're a bunch of like losers. We have no effect on the world. Well, that may be true to some degree, but the simple fact that if we had more influence in our own simple way, if we, you know, you turned your whole city into vegetarians, that would have a huge effect on the world. Isn't that interesting? So now you'll hear things that Prabhupada said, ISKCON will go down in history for changing the world. Now, whether you take that as a fact or a prediction that it could happen, either way, Prabhupada is saying that if people adopt Krishna consciousness, it has the power to change the world. And so you're in an amazing movement, aren't you? Yeah. So now, to tell people that the reason there's a war in Palestine and Israel now is because of meat eating, and if you want to stop the war, stop eating meat. They might condemn you for being an idiot for saying that. And that's okay. Maybe that's expected. It's too simplistic of an answer for most people. But when you understand the karmic laws and karmic consequences, there is so much violence being engaged in the world of animal killing. Where does the karmic reaction go? Who does it go to? It doesn't go to the cows. They're getting, you could say they're getting rid of their karma by suffering. But it, as Prabhupada said, it goes to the owners of the slaughterhouses. It goes to the men who are killing the animals. It goes to the men who are driving the trucks. It goes to the restaurant owners. It goes to the waiters. It goes to the cooks. It goes to any, this is the way karma works. It's in any way you support an action, you're an accomplice to that action, you get the karma. So in that way you can see, even if you're vegetarian, you shouldn't have anything to do with meat because you become an accomplice in it. I mean, unless you can't live unless you do that. It's the only thing to eat, or the only way you could make money is to work in a store that serves meat, but we would try to avoid that as far as possible. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the questions that were left over from last week and try to understand if we can remember the context. Radhapriya says, you said in class that Krishna always says yes, but not everyone has the same karma. When I said Krishna says yes, I think I needed to be more clear, or maybe I was clear and people weren't clear in hearing me. Krishna says yes to your mentality. So your mentality, I can do this, Krishna says yes. Your mentality, I cannot do this, Krishna says yes. The mentality, I will chant good rounds, Krishna says yes. The mentality, I'll never chant good rounds, Krishna says yes. So Krishna is reciprocating with your mentality. And it's not just because, oh, like I want to be rich, and Krishna says yes. But when Krishna says yes, he's just acknowledging that you want to be rich, and that's a material desire that could possibly divert you from Krishna consciousness. When he says yes, he's not saying, yeah, you'll become rich. Maybe it's not your karma, so you're not going to be rich. I think that was the confusion. So Krishna can say yes, but doesn't mean he's agreeing. But when he's saying yes to your mentality, he's just helping you reinforce it. Saying, okay. You know, like sometimes, let's say Chaitanya Dasi says to me, you know, I'll never be able to do this. And I could say, okay. Like, and I would say, okay, because I feel like I can't convince her otherwise. So I say, okay. So by saying, okay, I'm kind of agreeing with her that, yeah, you're right. You can't do it. I don't see that you could think any differently than this. So that's kind of what Krishna's doing when he says, yeah, you're right. That's how you think, and you'll get the result of thinking that way. But indirectly, Krishna's saying, it's not that I taught you to think this way, but I'm just agreeing with you that this is how you think. And if this is how you think, then okay, so I'll help you think that way more, because that's what I do. I reciprocate. Even though I said think this way, you think another way. Okay, so what can I do now? I already told you how to think, but you don't. So I think my point was it's important to realize that when we're thinking and believing in a certain way, when we have specific attitudes, think in your mind that Krishna is just agreeing with you and empowering you, which is a beautiful thought if you have a positive way of thinking. Oh, he's going to help me. And everyone has that experience. Krishna will help you, right? You know, how do I do this? I'm afraid to do it. Just do it. Krishna will help you. I asked my father, he's an artist, in 1971. I said, can you do a painting of Krishna? I mailed him the poster. And he said, he looked at it and he said, although he's done portraits before, he was quite a good artist. He mostly did still lifes, but he did do portraits. Our house was just full, every wall was full of paintings, not of Krishna, but his paintings of mostly fruit and flowers and some people. And he did a nice portrait of a sailor once who had a wooden leg, you know, like a very fictional type Hollywood sailor. It was a really good painting. And he would just give them away. We didn't have any more wall space. Anyway, he looked at this painting of Krishna and he said, I've never done anything like this. I don't know if I can do it. And I said, well, just try it. Krishna will help you. He said, okay. So he did it. And it came out quite well. At least it came out. I don't know where this painting is. We hung it in the Vancouver temple. Maybe it's sitting in their attic somewhere. Or maybe they didn't like it and threw it away. But we hang in the Vancouver temple when I was there. And after he did the painting, he said, you know, I didn't think I could do the painting, but you said Krishna would help me. And he did. He did help me. I was able to do it. And at that time, he had become an atheist because my mother died of cancer. And then he became an atheist after that because she was young. Wow, how old? She was like 67, 66 or something, 67 when she died. So it's like too young to die, and died in a horrible way. He became an atheist, but still, my dear devotees, even my atheistic father accepted that Krishna would help him, and he was bold enough to do the painting. What to speak of you? So if you say, yes, Krishna will help me, then Krishna says, yes, I will help you. If you say, no, Krishna doesn't like me, he won't help me, I'm a loser. And Krishna will say, loser, why would I help you? You're a loser. That was my point. Like, Krishna's going to reciprocate with your mentality. And if you understand this, then obviously, if Krishna's going to, if I'm going to invest $1 and Krishna's going to give me 10, I probably should invest all my money because he's going to 10 times it. But if I think, why would Krishna want to help me? I'm not going to invest anything. Then you get back nothing because you invested nothing. That's all I was saying. Invest 0, you get back 0. Invest $1, you get 10. Invest 10, you get 100. Invest 100, you get 1,000. Invest 1,000, you get 10,000. That's a good deal, right? Don't you think? So rather than think negatively, oh, I'm a loser, I can't do this. Think, oh, Krishna's just going to reciprocate with my thinking. And even if my thinking is a bit artificial or false or like, well, I don't really believe this, but well, let me try to think, have faith. I'll just, let's see what, okay, Krishna, you say you'll help me. Okay, you're going to help me. And then Krishna says, yeah, okay, I'll help you. And the only way you can know that is you have to do it, right? You have to try it. Otherwise, how would you know it? And if you sit back and say, well, I don't know. I mean, I know, ye tamam prapajante, it's right there, 4:11. Tams tadaiva bhajamyaham. I know Krishna says I reciprocate, yeah, but I'm a special species. I'm in the loser species. There are 8,400,000 species of life. I'm the 4,800,001 species, the loser species. So Krishna doesn't like me, he's not going to help me. Yeah, so you can think that way, and Krishna will say, okay, that's the way you think. That's the way you think. I'll reciprocate with that. But it's not like your karma is going to change, I want to be a millionaire. And Krishna says, yes. But when my point was, Krishna says, yes, he's saying, yeah, you fool, why don't you think about being a pure devotee rather than a millionaire? Now, if you want to be a millionaire so you can build a temple, that's different because that's not against pure devotional service. But if it's like, I want to be a millionaire so I can live comfortably because my little putt-putt car is too small, right? Chaitanya Dasi, Marconi is a bigger car. So he's going to pray for $1 million. She's got a putt-putt, like they have a real putt-putt, right? If you're as tall as Chaitanya Dasi, you bang your head on the ceiling, right? I was just reading this morning. It's really interesting. Prabhupada said, one of the offenses to the Holy Name, that Prabhupada said, he's repeating the offenses. One of the offenses that Samira is laughing because she was in that putt-putt, so she knows. We drove from all the way from Zagreb to Ljubljana in that putt-putt, and right, that was 5 hours in a putt-putt. That was quite an austerity. Yeah. Anyway, so Prabhupada was saying that one of the offenses is to consider the holy name to be one of the auspicious ritualistic activities in the Vedas as fruitive activity. At Karmakanda, thinking, I can do some puja to get to upgrade my putt-putt, get some money or position or whatever. And Prabhupada says, this offense to consider the chanting Hare Krishna to be one of the auspicious ritualistic activities often in the Vedas, he elaborated on it and said, if you chant Hare Krishna with a desire to accumulate sense gratification, material benefit for your sense gratification, that's that offense. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not like if you say, Krishna, I want this, whatever this is fine if you want that for his service, but if you want it for your material benefit and comfort and well-being and false ego and sense gratification, that's an offense to the holy name. And so what are you chanting? Are you chanting Hare Krishna? No. You're simply asking Krishna to make your life more comfortable, right? Now, if you need to be more comfortable because you're 7 feet 8 inches tall and you bang your head on your putt-putt and you've got like a hole in your head, yeah, of course. You can pray, Krishna, can you help me get a little more money because for your service, the hole in my head it's like a real obstacle to my service. That's different. As long as it's all about what your motive is, right? Okay. So that should answer Radha Priya's inquiry. Scarlett says, Free will did not help. If we stayed, then it meant we should go and kill. Free will may not help, but Krishna gives you free will, so you can do something that will help. But obviously, if you have free will, you can do something that won't help. So free will doesn't mean, like we were saying, Radhapriya was saying, Krishna, what did she say? Krishna sanctions or something. She said something else. But Krishna allows. Just because Krishna allows you to do something doesn't mean he wants you to do it. But free will is a product of the jiva, the soul. Like life means you have free will. If you don't have free will, you're a stone. What's the difference between scarlet plum and a stone? Scarlet plum can get up right now and walk out of her house, where a stone cannot, because she's a living entity. She can decide what she wants to do and not want to do. Doesn't mean she'll decide the right thing, but she's a living entity, so she has free will to decide, just as we all do. So that's the difference between a stone and a person. So now we all have free will. In the spiritual world, everyone uses their free will to love Krishna. If you don't want to use your free will to love Krishna, there's another place for you, but it's not there. You can't be there. You have to be here. So I made a very important point on Wednesday. I don't know if you picked up on it. I want to make it again, just so you realize I think this is a really important point to consider. Did you ever make a decision you regretted? Okay, I'm going to tell you surfing decisions I regretted. Sometimes we go out surfing and we paddle out and we don't realize how big the waves are. And then all of a sudden, these big waves are coming. And if you don't paddle out quick enough to get over the wave will come and break on your head and push you down under the water to the point where sometimes you can hardly hold your breath, right? And then you finally get up, and then there's another big wave, and that pushes you down, and you have to paddle out, and you're exhausted. And just, Prabhupada said, surfers are sufferers, now you know. Of course, it's all cost benefit, but to most surfers, it's worth going through that hell to get that good wave. But anyway, it's those times I would tell myself, what an idiot you are for coming, for paddling out here and surfing today, because the water's so rough, waves are so rough, and sometimes in the winter it's so cold. It's like I didn't have those moments all the time, but occasionally, when sometimes the waves are much bigger than they looked. Like you paddle out and it's in between waves, and you get out there and it's like, oh, this is way bigger, way beyond your pay level as like a 15-year-old kid surfer. And I'm sure you've been in situations like that in your life, haven't you? Where you're like, why did I do this? This is really stupid. And you're right in the middle of it and you're suffering, right? So I made this point in class, which I think is so valid. We are living in a world where everyone has free will, but very few people know how to use it. We're living in a world where everyone is acting according to false ego. Everyone is competing for the resources of this world, and everyone is competing for material enjoyment, which means material enjoyment means exploiting the resources of this world. So everyone's competing for resources, right? More money, better house, better car, better job, better body, better. So we're all competing for so now we have made a decision, my dear devotees, we have made a decision to come into a world where everyone is free to do anything they want, and very few people are following religious principles. And even those who are following religious principles, of them, many are misusing it to commit even more abominable activities than atheists. Now, why would anyone in their right mind choose to come into a world where people were free to do any damn thing they wanted and were free to completely ignore God's instructions or disbelieve in him and expect that this would be a good place to live? Just meditate on that. The next time you complain about what's going on in the world, remember, hello, you did make a decision to come to a place where you're going to have people crazy enough to commit terrorist activities, people crazy enough to have ideologies that would cause suffering and so forth. So we pray that you won't be a victim of this, of course. And obviously we pray you would never do such a thing, and we know you wouldn't. But we're in a world in which all these things are possible. And when you trigger people enough, then these things start happening, right? So that's why you look at the world today, and a lot of people are saying, can you blame the Palestinians for their reaction? They've been triggered for so many years. So this is like normal. And so it shows that human nature is such that if you trigger people enough, even nice people will do things which would be considered uncivilized or worse than uncivilized. So that's the world we live in. So when we look at all these things, it's, there's protest march and people are irrational and emotional. It's like, well, this is where we live. This is just, you can understand why people react the way they do. And then people aren't taking guidance from religious scripture, at least many aren't. And of those who are, a certain percentage are interpreting it in a way that it is misconstruing what those religious leaders taught. So we're in a mess. And the only way out of this mess is for people to turn their free will over to God and do what he says. And then everything will be fine. Then no one will be misusing their free will. But atheism means people will do whatever feels right to them. And some of what they do may be right, but there's no guarantee it's right all the time. And there's no guarantee it's going to be absolutely right in the spiritual sense. Actually, there's every guarantee it wouldn't be right in the spiritual sense, although morally, ethically, it may be right, but that's a gamble because it's just up to them and their whim. And as Kali Yuga progresses, it's going to get worse. So that's the situation we're in. And that's why Prabhupada felt we or any genuine religious movement could save the world, because it restricts people's free will. Because when we misuse free will, we create hell on earth, right? Does that make sense to you? So that's what's going on. So that you can't, we can complain about it, we can lament about it, we can obviously be compassionate towards those who are suffering, but at least we understand why it's happening. And free will is such that, as you know, this conflict between Israel and Palestine has not been settled. And it's been, many, many political leaders have tried to settle it. They've been unable to do it. The UN has been unable to do it. Palestinians have suffered. The UN has been unable to stop their suffering. It's like when people's free will runs amok, then you run into these situations, and we've seen them, World War I, World War II. Nobody could stop it. Vietnam War, Korean War, nobody could stop it. So this is what you run into when you allow people free will. But free will is the nature of a living entity. Otherwise, if you don't have free will, you're matter. Matter doesn't have free will. My microphone is here every day. It's not like one day a microphone says, it leaves me a note, I got tired of sitting in your office. I'm going for a walk. No, it's matter. It can't move. It doesn't have free will. So free will is good because we can use it to serve Krishna, and free will is not good because we can use it to serve Maya. And if we don't have Guru and his guidance, then we misuse it and we create havoc. Correct? So it's just a nice meditation when we're looking at what's going on in the world and say, well, what do you expect when you give people free will? What do you expect is going to happen unless they're following religious principles? So when we see religious people who are following genuine religious principles, we're quite happy. Oh, this is nice. They believe in nonviolence. They believe in morality and so on. And we look at that and go, wow, I wish more people were like that. But when we look at religious people who are committing sinful activities in the name of religion, then we look at that and think, this is worse than atheism. Just better say, I don't believe in anything, then take something and interpret it. So now people are doing something sinful in the name of religion with all that emotion and fervor that you get from a religious ideology. Then it ends up, as we've seen, in war, violence, committing all kinds of atrocities in the name of God. So welcome to the material world, everyone. I hope I inspired you to get out of here as ASAP. Because if you don't, then at least you know what to expect. And so you may be pure and perfect, but everybody won't be. Now, one thing I read this morning is really interesting. Prabhupada said, when you chant, do kirtan, if the person leading it is pure, the kirtan is pure, which that would make the assumption that if the person leading it is not pure, the kirtan is not pure, which is a real impetus for us to be pure, not only in our kirtan, but in our speaking and our lifestyle, because the more pure we are, the more we'll have a pure effect. So if you want to help the world, become more Krishna conscious, become more pure, you can do something. And at least understand that our philosophy has solutions. Whether we can influence the world enough is another thing. But if you are confident in our philosophy and its solutions, it definitely inspires you to want to spread Krishna consciousness. So Tali is quoting one of the great acharyas of the hippie era, Jimi Hendrix. When the love of power is overcome by love, there is peace in the world. Yeah. So we were talking about the love of power and how you don't know how much you love power until you're given power. And then you realize how much you love power, because you could think, well, I'm very humble, I don't want power, until you're given it. And then you get intoxicated by it. It's like, you've never taken a drug and somebody puts a drug in your drink and you take it and you get high for the first time. You think, wow, I really like this. I want more. So it's like that. It's an intoxicant. Power is an intoxicant. And if you've never had it, you might think, I don't need it until you get it. And so sometimes we're put in a position of power and then we misuse it. That was the point we're making. So yeah, a love of power or love. I love power, or I love power so I can use power to love people. That's good. Sangeeta says, I get the tolerance and other things. I get that we should be tolerant in other things like tolerance. But is the person acting is not responsible for their actions, as modes of nature and other factors are responsible too. The modes of nature are facilities, but we are responsible. So like, I choose to get on an airplane to to Amsterdam on November 2nd, right? Chaitanya Dasi, I'm flying, yeah, I choose, right? Oh, excuse me, November 6th, yeah, excuse me. I choose to fly to Amsterdam on November 6th. I'll see you all there if you're at the airport. I guess I get there November 7th. So that's my choice. But once I'm on the airplane, it's not my choice anymore. I'm at the mercy of the airplane, the pilot, and so forth. So the modes of nature are a little bit like that. You make a choice, and then you're influenced by that mode, and then that mode carries out the action. So by your thinking, by your lifestyle, by your behavior, and so on, you associate with a certain mode, and that mode then impels you. Does that make sense? So, Krishna says everything happens by the modes. So you could misread that and think the devil made me do it. I'm actually innocent. It's not that I wanted to do it. It's the devil made me do it. Did the devil make you do it? Yes, he did, because you gave in to the devil. But if you didn't give in to the devil, you could have resisted. And if you resisted, you wouldn't have done that. But because you didn't resist, you gave yourself over to the devil, then he had control of you. So he did make you do it, but it was your fault because you gave yourself to him. Does that make sense to you? So if Samira decides to take LSD, and the LSD makes her do all kinds of weird things, we will say, it's the LSD that's making her weird. But she decided to take it. So Samira is saying, nah, I'm innocent, you know, I'm like saying all these crazy things, but it's actually the LSD that's making me say these things. And she's right, it's the LSD making her say these things. But she decided to take it. Does that make sense to you? Like you're putting yourself under the influence of the modes of nature, and then the modes are controlling you. And now you're blaming the modes for controlling you when you decide, I'm going to Amsterdam. I'm blaming the pilot. I'm going to Amsterdam. It's all his fault. No, you got on the plane. You bought the ticket. Hello. Right? So when you make a decision, then the modes of nature will come. You can make a decision to live in the mode of goodness. You can make a decision to live in the transcendental world. And you can go to Vrindavan and you're in the transcendental world, and then you're like very Krishna conscious. And it's not even you, it's the Vrindavan atmosphere, but you agree to put yourself in that atmosphere and you let that atmosphere uplift you. You don't fight that atmosphere, you go along with it, and then you become more Krishna conscious. But even in Vrindavan, you could fight it. It's possible. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's see what else we have. Gloria Priya says she'd throw her husband out of the house. What, if he went to a football game or he went to a battle? Or both? Both. Oh my God, what kind of wife is that? You got to be, you're Gloria Priya's husband, you got to be strict. Otherwise, you'd be sleeping on the street. I guess that's good for your husband, right? Tell him. Carmen said non-devotee doctor, but I'm not sure in a relationship. What that's in relationship. You'll have to explain that to me, Carmen. Also, the problem is that some wars and some cultures have a very confused mind and kill in the name of God and make rules about it. Example, these people deserve punishing from God, so it is allowed to do anything to them. Yeah, this is an example of how humanity can feel they have the power of control or believe that. Yeah, this is why people become atheists, because they see that these horrific actions are committed in the name of God. You know, I had a little joke. Oh, my chair keeps sinking down. I think when I sit forward, it sinks down. I had a little joke. I said, I have the solution to the Middle East crisis. You turn everyone there into atheists. Then they have nothing to fight about. And although that's a joke, I think it's true. Don't you? The solution to war in the Middle East is that everyone becomes an atheist. So if we want to solve, of course, it's not really the solution, but we make them all devotees, and that's the solution. But it might, but if in theory they were all atheists, but maybe they wouldn't fight. I can't say for sure, but maybe it would be easier to negotiate. What can a devotee do when living in a family where they meet? I don't think you can do anything but tolerate. Or walk out of the house when it's dinner time. Or figure out how to get out ASAP. Yeah, you know, when we're in an environment which is not conducive to our bhakti, then we think, how can I get out of this? We pray to Krishna. We meditate on how to get out. What can I do? We also pray to be tolerant of the situation. I think both things are necessary. Christe in, is that Krishna Premi? What if we have to work with clients who eat meat? Would that also count as supporting? No. What you could do is explain to them the modes of nature and the effects of the food you eat on your consciousness. What I would do if I had a client, this is what I would do. I would explain the modes of nature in a way they could understand. And I would explain to that everything you hear, everything you see, everything you smell, everything you speak, everything you eat, and everything you touch affects your consciousness. And there's different frequencies in what you hear. There's a difference between hearing Beethoven and hearing Led Zeppelin. Well, Led Zeppelin's not so bad. What's a bad band? Like Metallica or something? I don't know. There's a difference between heavy metal and classical and how it affects you. There's a difference. You just go through the different. There's a difference between reading Shakespeare and some trashy novel and how it affects you and so forth. And there's, because everything comes with a frequency in one of these three modes, and the food you eat also comes in modes. And all of these modes affect your consciousness. So if you're trying to evolve your consciousness, you want to hear, speak, see, taste, smell in the highest mode. And then you may want to consider that the frequencies of meat have violence connected with them. So it's a very low vibration. Say this is one of the reasons that people notice a huge difference when they stop eating meat, because they've disconnected from the violence and that vibrational violence and the karmic reaction that you get, even though you didn't kill the animal, but if no one wanted to eat meat, there would be no need, there would be no market for it, no animals would be killed. That's the way I would explain it, as eventually when they're ready to hear it. And I think every devotee who's a coach should help their clients understand the effects of the environment that they're in and how that affects them. Because if you want to heal yourself, you got to create an environment that's going to direct your consciousness in the way you want to go. So like people who are depressed, they like dark things. They probably have all their windows closed. They probably don't get up till 9 o'clock, if they even get up, and so forth. And so, you get up, if you're depressed, get up early, open the windows, get outside, exercise, be in nature. That's sattvic. Don't eat animal food. Eat fruits, vegetables, freshly cooked or raw. It will affect you differently. And so a lot of times what you're trying to do is you're trying to change your consciousness in the way you think, but the things you're doing are pushing your consciousness down. So you're working against yourself. So your lifestyle has to support the direction of where your consciousness goes. So in that way, if we bring people to Sattva Guna and they live a sattvic life, then their consciousness it's very ready to understand spiritual principles because they're sattvic. In worst case scenario, it's just going to help them materially, even if they're not open to spirituality, but they will be open to spirituality. And my experience is, because I've asked people to stop eating meat, and they said, why do you eat meat? And I said, one of the reasons we don't eat meat is because we don't want to commit violence on any living entity. And when people say, I don't understand that, how, we're human beings and God has given us this right and so forth, I say, would you be willing to not eat meat for 2 weeks? Because if you do, you'll understand what I said. And whenever they agree, and I meet them 2 weeks later, they say, yeah, now I understand. So I think you can explain to your clients, there's certain things I cannot teach you unless your lifestyle changes. You won't be able to understand them because you have these frequencies that are, how should we say it? They're like working in your brain and your consciousness in a way that there's certain things you can understand that are more refined, because your lifestyle is not refined enough to understand it. So you can't just understand it theoretically. Whereas if you change your lifestyle, then you will be sympathetic to the violence of animals that you don't even see, but you will begin to feel, oh yeah, eating meat there's this connection, and you'll start to feel sympathy for these animals. And say, these animals have mothers, and these animals are children, and these animals have emotion. You might want to say, no, they don't. But the reason you say, no, they don't, is because you're eating the meat, and you can't be sensitive to it until you stop. But if you stop, you'll start to feel it. At least that's the theory. And you can say, well, let me just offer this to you. Would you be willing to do this? And let's talk in 2 weeks and see. And then you'll find out. The fact is, when you change your lifestyle, you think differently. So Surshar says, since terrorists killed and raped, also kids now, since they're taking revenge, being in Krishna consciousness, I justify their revenge, but in that action also civilians are killed. So in such case, why don't we stand strong with mind justify? So this is, it's like I said, there's 3 sides to every story. And I think it just depends, everybody's got their story based on their identification. And they're both wrong and they're both right. So there has to be some compromise in between. And so the civilized world is asking Israel not to invade. Even as I said, Putin's asking them not to invade. Iran is like happy that they're invading. That's another thing. That's politics. But other Middle Eastern countries are not happy that they're invading. But they see, the thing is, you can understand why the Palestinians did that, even if you obviously don't approve of it. You could understand why, after 75 years of oppression and trying to resolve it. Sometimes even in our movement, devotees do something drastic because they're trying to bring leaders' attention to a problem, and the leaders are ignoring it. So the devotees do something drastic because they feel like, well, this is the only way. Like I'm relinquishing my position. I don't believe in the philosophy of, or like I'm not going to initiate another disciple until the GBC allows women to become gurus, like 100 gurus to do that. It's like, whoa, that's pretty drastic. Yeah, well, that's the only way you're going to listen. Not that every guru would do that, but I'm just giving an example. Or I'm going to stop initiating if any woman initiates, I will stop initiating. I will not support this. Either way. So sometimes we may do something drastic because it's the only way we can get attention. And so I think I can speak as an American who is not fully an American because I've embraced a religion that represents a different culture and a way of life. And having lived in India, I've had to come to understand that more of Asian Eastern way of thinking and that culture. And one of the things that came out after 9/11 is that very few Americans were making this point, but such a valid point, and said, you need to understand why they did that. What they did was wrong, but you need to understand that they did that because of what you're doing. It's a reaction. Every time someone gets upset with you, you think they are the cause of this. They incited this, but you don't always realize you did things that incited them, and theirs is a reaction. They didn't initiate this. This is a response to you. And so, the more sensitive Americans understood that Islamic culture has certain values, and America undermines those values in every way. I mean, look at America and the woke movement, and you don't know which gender you are, and so people in Islamic country, and all the divorce, they're looking at this and going, this is what America is exporting to the world, and we don't want that. We don't want our culture to be contaminated by American materialistic values. And so you got to understand that, right? And that's what Israel is, a Western country, and it stands for that. So that's one thing. And Palestinians have been oppressed. So you even though you condemn their actions, you have to understand what motivated it, and vice versa. The Palestinians have to understand, like it's a complicated topic because, they say, well, Israelis took Palestine away from the Palestinians. Well, Israel belonged to the Jews 3,000 years before that, something like that. So it's complicated, and we need to understand one another better, right? So we don't justify violence. unless it's in defense of Dharma. But we're going to read next week how Prabhupada says, if you have a right to violence, if you're being attacked. So, the Jews have a right, but the question is, they have a right to defend themselves, but according, at least to us and even the world, you don't have a right to defend yourself at the cost of innocent citizens. So that's the problem. So that's the best I can answer you in 2 minutes for that question. The thing is, a lot of things are simple on paper, but when you have to apply them in the real world, or there's emotions, there's so much emotion involved and so much hatred and so much prejudice and exploitation that's creating these emotions, and you're dealing with human emotions, and then it's a complicated issue. Yeah. I mean, we can pray. We always pray. We should always pray. We can pray now. At the same time, karma, a lot of times when I look at, this is just a personal way I see things, that like oftentimes we'll pray that these innocent people will not have to suffer, but then they do. Thousands of people are killed and so forth. And sometimes I think, well, there's this karmic reaction that's going on, and what can we do to intervene with that? And then we're limited in what we can do. And sometimes the reactions just take place, and they're like, you try to do your best, but you're limited in what you can do. And Prabhupada said that, we read it on Monday, that nobody wants forest fire, and then these bamboos that erupt against one another, they create fire. And so in a purport, Prabhupada said that there's this karmic reaction, and Krishna puts these leaders in charge of countries to fight. And so now you have Biden saying, oh yeah, we support Israel, we're behind you, which means they're going to give men and military and money. And everyone's saying, no, you should tell the Israelis not to fight, because there's got to be a better way to deal with this, because the lives of millions of people are at stake. So when I look at that, I think it's just like this karmic thing. It's like a lot of times it's like we're all innocent citizens. We're not politicians. We don't have PhDs in political science, and we can say, oh, the solution is just this. It's like, and everybody can see, but it doesn't happen, because there's this karmic reaction is going on, and they can't come up with simple solutions. Often, that's the way I see it, and I think, sometimes someone is voted in as a political leader, and I think, this is the wrong person to run this country. Why were they voted in? I think maybe there's some karma this country has to live through, and therefore, inadvertently, indirectly, the people voted in this leader, and he's going to be the ambassador of the karma of that country by making a decision to go to war and so forth. And that seems congruent with what Prabhupada's saying, how leaders turn against one another and create these horrible situations. Anyway, get out there and preach. The world needs you. And I think that's what we can take away from all of this. My wife and I are going to go somewhere now, so I'm going to have to say goodbye. We'll miss you dearly during japa, but we'll be chanting. I'll be chanting in the car. And we'll see you on Friday when we go to Russia. Hare Krishna to all of you. And yeah, I hope, all I can say is I hope that when you see the suffering in the world, I hope it just inspires you to be a better devotee and embark on realizing that you can't really do what you can do is proportionate to who you are. So you can't just go out there and do something because your consciousness, your being your lifestyle, everything contributes to what you can do, and it contributes to the effect you have on the world, and it contributes to your own inspiration to help, and your own determination and ability to tolerate and withstand all the obstacles that you have to go through. So, as you improve yourself, it's inevitably you'll be able to contribute better, make the world better, and help people. I mean, ultimately get out of the world, because this is what's going to be going on in the world for the indefinite future. And if people come back and take birth here, this is what they're subjected to. And it's a real gamble when you take birth, because you have no idea what's going to happen to you. So that's what I have to say, and I'm going to leave now. Hare Krishna to all of you. Srila Prabhupada ki